the port until they are on radar. That's what chapter 8, verse 1 is all about. The text says, then God remembered Noah. He remembers Noah and every living thing and all the animals that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind. Y'all hear what I said? He made you got water over the mountains, and all God it needed was not a bunch of winds. The text says a wind he made to pass over the earth, and the waters subsided. You see, God reigns over the rains. And you must never forget that if you've been living righteously and you find yourself in a storm, it is a controlled storm. God is still in control of your storm. He has complete, total control of the storm. When he speaks, it rains, and when he speaks, the rain stops falling in your life. Now, Noah and his family are on board the ark, and the ark is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable with the animals, and you know it's got to be uncomfortable with each other. Do I have some help in here? And when you read the text, once God shut them in, God never said another word to them until chapter 8, verse 15. Now, they were on the ark for a year. And all up to that point, God had been talking to them. In fact, I kept looking at it like, why does he keep repeating everything over? Chapter 7 is a lot of repetition. He keeps saying over and over again, I'm going to destroy the earth. I'm going to destroy all the stuff outside. I'm going to destroy the birds. I'm going to destroy the animals and everything that's breathing. I'm going to destroy. And over. God, and I felt like saying, God, I got the point. I understand what you're saying. You're going to destroy. Why do you have to keep repeating it? Because by the time he shut them in, he knew he wasn't going to say nothing else. The entire time they are in the ark, in an uncomfortable place, in a storm, these are righteous people. At least Noah was. That's another sermon for another day. It don't say Mrs. Noah and the kids was all that righteous. They just got the benefit of being hooked up to Noah. And sometimes you got to understand that sometimes somebody else's righteousness can be a blessing for you. So he never says anything else to them. And when the earth is dried, then he tells them, all right, now y'all can get on out the ark. God spoke to them before the storm, and he spoke to them after the storm. But not a word during the storm. Now, I don't know about y'all, but sometimes when I'm going through my storm, I'm wondering where God is. You the one that told me to come out here, and now that I'm here, where are you? And that's when most of us lose it. Because everything was fine before the storm. Everything was going just fine. But in the middle of the storm, because he's not talking, most of us lose it. Because we feel like we're out there all by ourselves, and we feel like God has forgotten about us and left us alone. I just want you to know that no matter how bad your storm is, no matter how long you've been in that particular storm, God has not forgotten about you, because it is a controlled storm and you're still on radar. The purpose of a radar is so that you don't get lost out there. So that if something happens to you out there, somebody who's back on the land can locate you. and deploy, search, and rescue. He has not lost track of your situation. And by the way, the word remember does not imply that God had forgotten about them. In Hebrew, it's not about him forgetting, because he doesn't have that capability. Amen, somebody. Now, if I say, oh, I remember, that implies that up to that point, I forgot. But when we're talking about God remembering, in the Hebrew, it really has nothing to do with him forgetting. But what he really means is that he is returning to a previous agreement. Because he had already told them, I am establishing my covenant, my agreement with you. So in chapter 8, verse 1, God is simply revisiting his promise. And his promise was that Noah and his family and the animals on board would survive. So that God is a promise-keeping God. Noah survived because God keeps his promise. You and I are in here today because God keeps his promise. And one day he's going to take us all home with him because that's what he promised. Now, I love Noah. I think Noah's a cool dude. Noah has so much to teach us because with all that he went through, he never seems worried. He doesn't even ask God questions. Can you imagine if that had been us getting on the ark? We never would have got on until he answered all our questions. Well, how long is this trip going to be? Where exactly are we going to land? What time will we pull into port? Is there shopping available where we're going to pull in? What are our accommodations going to be like? Well, I would like a balcony and a porthole in my stateroom. We'd have all kinds of questions. Noah does not even ask a question. In fact, when it gets difficult, we still don't even see him praying. So I was wondering, what is it that makes him so calm and so peaceful during an extended storm in an uncomfortable place? Maybe it's the fact that even though he was now on the ark, he never stopped walking with God. Maybe he knew that God knew exactly what he was doing. Maybe he had learned to put his trust in God. Maybe he knew that no storm is all bad and that no storm lasts always. Maybe he knew that on the other side of the storm that there was a new beginning. Maybe he knew that God had not forgotten about him. So that when Noah finally comes out of the ark, and by the way, you don't come out until God brings you out. But on the other side of that storm, chapter 8, verse 20 says that Noah built an ark. And he took every clean animal and every clean bird and offered a burnt sacrifice to the Lord. Now, in the Bible, there's a number of reasons for a burnt offering. But suffice it to say that one of the reasons is to indicate to God that the worshiper, the person offering the sacrifice, is completely and totally dedicated to God and God's plan. When Noah came out of the ark on the slopes of Mount Aaron, the first thing he did was lead his family in worship. I said the first thing he did was lead his family in worship. Because when you just come through a year-long storm, when God finally brings you out on the other side, it just makes good sense to worship him. If the Lord has kept you when you couldn't keep yourself, then you ought to worship him. If the Lord has blessed you when you could not bless yourself, then you ought to worship him. If the Lord has rescued you when you could not rescue yourself, then you ought to worship him. If the Lord has loved you when you could not love yourself, then you ought to worship him. It just makes good sense to give God the praise with everything you've got. Now, I'm trying to get somebody to see that you can make an impact from an uncomfortable place. Abraham made an impact from Mount Moriah when he offered his only son. Moses made an impact when he got stuck at the Red Sea,